المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المغفورين والمنتجبين لا سيما مولانا وسيدي صاحب العصر والزمان روحي وأرواح العالمين وأهلنا وعجل الله تعالى فضله الشريف ولا اعتداء وعلى أعدائهم ومنكر ذرائهم لنا إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فاشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. For the hastening of the return of our 12th Imam al-Hujjah, one salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I began my first extending my condolences to our 12th and awaited Imam and awaited Savior Imam al-Hujjah, and then to each and every one of you who are here tonight as we gather to commemorate the supreme sacrifice of Abdullah Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. And first and foremost, we ask Allah, as we enter into this new year for the Muslim calendar, as we enter into this new year, we first of all ask Allah to accept all of the acts of worship that we have performed in the previous year, to overlook any slips or transgressions that we have had against the orders of Allah, and to give us the ability in this Muharram especially to truly commemorate the sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, to do justice to the message of Sayyid Shuhada, and to leave these Muharram gatherings nightly with a greater appreciation for the Deen of Islam and for our beloved messenger and for the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. For the hastening of the return of our 12th Imam, Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. 1,379 years ago, a man took a stand on the plains of Karbala. And who knew that that stand would continue to resonate until today? To the point where tonight, 500 million people around the earth are commemorating the first night of Muharram. Whether it be here in London or in Lahore, whether it be in Karbala or in Canada, wherever in the world where there is a number of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, they have gathered, whether it's one person or a community, to commemorate this very important event in the history of Islam. And as I said, that this was the supreme sacrifice that Abdullah alayhi salam gave on the day of Ashura, to give his blood for a cause which meant so much to him, and which resulted in the preservation, in the protection of the religion of his grandfather, our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Indeed, tonight is the beginning of the new year for Muslims. And it's interesting that as Muslims, we do not commemorate the new year like the people around us in our society. You know, when December 31st rolls along and the new year is about to set in, those who do not subscribe to the ideology of Islam, they spend their nights in the nightclubs, they spend their time in the bars drinking. As I've said in the past, that they go to the liquor store, and we go to the liquor store. We go to remember Allah on the night of the new year, whereas other people fall in ghafla, in heedlessness of Allah. We as a community, we spend not only the first night of the new year, not only the first 10 days or the 12 days, but we know that many communities around the world commemorate Muharram, for Safar until the 9th of Rabiul Awwal. 2 months and 10 days we commemorate the supreme sacrifice of Sayyid Shuhada alayhi salam. And in this commemoration, in which we embarking upon tonight, where we embark upon the boarding of the Ark of Salvation, as we know that Sayyid Shuhada is known as being the Ark of Salvation, and we are inshallah tonight, God willing, embarking upon this boat to guide us to the shores of salvation, the shores of prosperity of this world and the world to come. And this is a commemoration, as I said, which has lasted almost 1,400 years. In 21 years will be marking the 1400th anniversary of Karbala. But let me begin by saying that this tragedy of Karbala that we are marking tonight, and we will continue to mark until the night and the day of Ashura, and well beyond, that this was a tradition of Rasulullah, our beloved Prophet. Now you might say, well, how is it possible that Rasulullah, a man who left this world 50 years before the tragedy of Karbala, how did he commemorate this supreme sacrifice? How did he know about it? Let me take you back in history to the day that Imam Hussein alayhi salam came into this world. Sheikh in his voluminous book, 2-volume book on history called a very large work now already available in English. This amazing magnum opus of Sheikh where he details the lives of the 14 infallibles. When he looks at the birth anniversary of Sayyid al-Shuhada, he gives to us what we can loosely define as the first majlis of Hussein. The first time or ceremony relating the tragedy of Hussein that we have from the perspective of the religion of Islam. He mentions in this work that when Lady Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, when she conceived and she delivered her second child, he was born, and Rasulullah asked Asma bint Umays, whom as we know was initially the wife of Ja'far al-Tayyar. After he was killed, she then married Abu Bakr. After his death, she then comes into the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen. She was there when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was born. He was born, and Rasulullah immediately tells Asma, he says, "Oh Asma, go and bring my son to me." And keep in mind that although Hussein is the grandson of Rasulullah, but as we know, Allah in the Quran refers to him as the son of the Messenger of Allah in the verse of Mubahala. So Asma is told, go and bring my new grandson to me. He's wrapped up in white, he comes into the hands of Rasulullah. Rasulullah looks at this young, innocent, newborn child, just a few minutes old, a few hours old. And he looks at the child, he holds him in his hands, he kisses him just like any father would kiss his grandson. And then the hadith differ, the narratives differ on what happened. But we're told that he begins to cry profusely. He begins to weep and shed tears. Now we know that tears are of many different types. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sometimes we cry out of happiness, but this was a tear that Rasulullah was shedding out of grief, out of sorrow, out of tragedy. Asma looks at Rasulullah and she says, "O Messenger of God, why are you crying? This is a newborn in your family. You have a new grandson. You should be elated at the news of a new child." And he cries and he begins to recount the tragedy of Karbala. He tells Asma that yes, this is a newborn today, but do you know that he will be killed by the worst people of my community? He will be slaughtered mercilessly. But he tells Asma, he says that don't tell Lady Fatima this news, because she's a new mother, just delivered this little boy, and it would break her heart to hear of the tragedy. Sheikh Abbas al-Qawmi says that a week passes, 7 days pass. Asma is once again in the presence of Rasulullah. He once again tells Asma, bring Hussein back to me. And incidentally, Rasulullah, at the naming of Hussein, he waited. He didn't even name the child. And in fact, actually, the angel Jibreel, the same angel that would come to Rasulullah with revelation, he descends at the feet of Rasulullah and he tells the messenger, he says that Ali is to you as Aaron was to Moses. As we know the famous hadith, the hadith of Manzila, where Allah's messenger tells Amir al-Mu'mineen that, "O Ali, anta minni bi manzilati Haruna min Musa." إِلَّا أَنَّهُ لَا نَبِيَّ بَعْدِي. That, O Ali, you are to me as Aaron was to Moses, except that after me there is no more prophet. Jibreel tells Rasulullah that because of that relationship between the two of you, Allah demands that you name your son as according to the names of the son of Harun, Shabbar and Shubair, according to one of the narrations. And so when Rasulullah says that this name, these are not Arabic, what should I call this grandson of mine in Arabic? He says, call him Hussein. Call him Hussein. And historians say that up until this time, you could not find people on the Arabian Peninsula who had the names of Hassan or Hussein alayhim salam. So this was unique in that category. In any case, on that 7th day, Asma is told to bring Hussein to Rasulullah. Again, Rasulullah holds the child. He performs the aqiqah, he shaves the hair of Hussein. We're told that he weighs that hair, gives the amount of the weight in silver in charity. He slaughters the sheep. He gives the meat to the community as a sadaqah, as a charity. And again he begins to cry. Again he begins to cry and recount again the tragedy of Karbala. And at this point we're told that he allows Asma to tell Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam about this tragedy, of what will happen on the day of Ashura. So brothers and sisters, this tragedy that we are beginning to mark tonight, this journey that we will be going on for the next 11 or 12 nights, this is something which began at the time of Rasulullah. He recounted the tragedy, he lamented, he grieved over it. And throughout the ages, throughout the times of our Imams alayhim as-salam, each and every one of our Imams encouraged, and not only encouraged, but they taught us the methodology of weeping over Karbala. Whether it be this gathering tonight of the men and women gathering, this was in the history of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. The curtain that separates the man and the women in this hall. Imam al-Rada alayhi salam has been quoted as saying that he would ask the companions to gather and have a majlis, and he would ask for a curtain to be drawn between the genders. And then he would have men come forth and recite poetry, the nabha, the latmiya, whatever you call it, to make people cry over the tragedy of Karbala. Let me go into a verse, a hadith rather, from the 8th Imam, Imam al-Rada, peace be upon him, in which he explains to us the state of affairs at the time of his father, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam. The 8th Imam, as you know, when you study the history of the Imams, that he had one of the greatest possibilities, opportunities to spread the culture of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Yes, the 5th and the 6th Imam came on the scene between the Bani Umayyah, Bani Abbas, and they were able to split open knowledge and teach the knowledge what the community needed. But the 8th Imam, we can say, was arguably one of those pioneers in the culture of Ashura, in the culture of commemoration of Ashura. Many of the events or the aspects that we still mark tonight are because of the 8th Imam. So the 8th Imam has been quoted as saying, in the hadith, he says that my father, meaning the 7th Imam, he says that إِذَا دَخَلَ شَهْرُ الْمُحَرَّمِ, that when the month of Muharram would set in, he says, لَا يُرَى ضَاحِكًا, he says, I would not see my father laughing, smiling, having fun. Now this shows us, before I go to the rest of the hadith, that Muharram was a time of transformation for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They would not even be seen smiling in the month of Muharram, let alone having video games and having fun and playing sports. They changed their entire lifestyle for at least, we can say, the 10 days of the beginning of Muharram. And then the Imam goes on to mention how gloom and sadness was on the face of his father for the entire first 10 days. And then he says, فَإِذَا كَانَ يَوْمَ الْعَاشِرِ, when the 10th day of Muharram would set in, he says, كَانَ ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمِ يَوْمَ مُصِيبَتِهِ وَحُزْنِهِ وَبُكَائِهِ, that the first 10 days were days of sadness, no doubt. 9 days were days of sorrow, of sadness, of grief. But he says that when the 10th of Muharram set in, the day of Ashura, that was a complete day of change in the character of the Imam. It was a day of grief, a day of sorrow. Not just for 20 minutes of the Musibat of Ashura, not just an hour of the day of Ashura when he came to the Majlis. He says that that day was a day of grief, of crying, of lamentation, of sorrow. This should show us, brothers and sisters, and the many other traditions that we have that maybe we will touch upon in the nights to come, that we have to take this opportunity as a moment of transformation, a moment of internal revolution, where we change ourselves and try our best to reflect in how Rasulullah and the family of the Prophet used to mark the first 10 days of the month of Muharram. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Narae Takbir, Narae Risalat, Narae Haydari, Narae Khufud Muhammad wa ali Muhammad Salawat.
In summary, these days and nights that we will be going through are days of tragedy, of sorrow, of grief, of commemorating this tragedy. And really, when you look at it, nobody in this room, and really nobody, no human being who has an ounce of humanity in their hearts, whether they be Muslim or not, whatever religion they follow, it doesn't matter when it comes to Karbala. Whatever, if you're a human being and you hear the tragedy of Karbala, you cannot but weep and cry and shed tears over this particular tragedy. And I've seen it myself when I've spoken to non-believers who have no inkling of what Islam is about. When I share a minute of Karbala with them, and I've seen people break down in tears like they lost a loved one from their family. But let me say this, that tears are not enough. Tears are good. Tears bring out an emotional aspect from us. You know, the hadith tells us that somebody who hears the tragedy of Karbala and a tear falls from their eye, a tear the size of the wing of a mosquito, and you know how small a mosquito is. Imagine a tear that small, but if a tear that small comes out of your eye, out of the grief of Karbala, hadith tells us that Allah is embarrassed to make you go to hellfire. He needs you to get to paradise because of that tear. SubhanAllah, that's the level of love that Allah has. That's the level of commitment we consider Allah has given based on the tragedy of Karbala. But let me say that tears, as I said, are not enough. Tears are just an introduction to that reformation of the soul, of the nafs. And really, this is what these nights are all about. It's about reformation. When we get into the latter nights, we'll hear about people like Nur, the man who was a truly free man, just as his mother named him. He could have cried on the day of Ashura for what he was doing, but he made that switch from the side of the enemies to the side of Abdullah. And that is what we're looking for, not only all of you, but myself. That we have a reformation in our lives over these nights, that the tears change into action, that we change on what we hear, we change our life, our lives, our lifestyle. Maybe many of us, maybe some of us are habituated to sin. Maybe, hopefully, at least in Muharram we'll stop those sins. And hopefully after Muharram we'll continue in that routine. Maybe many of us don't pray on a regular basis. We make our Fajr Qadha because it's so early in the morning. Let's make a commitment to Sayyidina that we will change, that we'll make our prayers on time. We all have those little quirks within our life that we're trying to overcome, just as Moore had to overcome, just like others had to overcome. Let us take this opportunity and translate those tears into a change in ourselves, into a reformation, a rectification of the soul, so that when our 12th Imam comes, when that 12th Imam comes, just like Moore was ready to go and meet his Imam, that when our 12th Imam arrives and he makes the call in Masjid al-Haram with his back against the Kaaba that he is Baqiyatul Imam, we ask that we can be of those who say labbaik to our Imam, that we can be there beside our 12th Imam, Imam al-Hujjah, to help him in the revolution that he will bring about, to reform society and to bring about justice upon this earth, for the hastening of that day of the return of our Imam, one salawat on Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This year, for the nights that I'll be with this beautiful community, I have chosen to speak on the topic of 10 commandments for a healthy Islamic life. 10 spiritual commandments that Allah gives us in the Quran, that if we reflect upon, if we think about these verses, and we try to implement them within our lives, that we will hopefully come out of these gatherings as healthy believers in Islam. You know, it's important, as we know in the Hadith, to be physically fit. We have so many traditions that talk about exercise, about eating right, and maybe again we'll touch upon those in the nights to come. That's an important aspect of our lives, to be physically ready, especially to help our Imam. But we have to realize that at the same time as being physically fit, we have to be mentally and spiritually fit. We have to have a heart which is ready to help the Imam. We have to be spiritually equipped to help and assist the Imam in that global movement to establish that system of justice. And so in this series of discussions under the theme of the 10 Commandments for a healthy Islamic life, I'm going to draw inspiration from chapter number 17 of the Holy Quran, chapter Bani Israel. A very important chapter. All verses of the Quran are important, but this collection of verses from verse number 23 up until 38 will form the basis of this discussion. And literally there are verses after verses which go into the various aspects of our life as human beings. And really we will see that they're not just Muslim qualities. They're not just going to be Islamic traits, praying and fasting, all of these things that we already know, all these mundane aspects of our religion. No, these will be things that are, again, transcending religion. They're traits of human beings. They're traits that, unfortunately, because we live in secular societies, whether it be here in the UK, or myself in Canada, or people wherever we live in countries that don't have God as the focus, whether it be Allah or God, whatever you call Him. Because we live in these secular societies, we tend to have lost a lot of our humanity, a lot of what it means to be a human being. And you can see this by looking at the news media, what's happening across the world, what's happening across the ocean in the countries, where they've elected presidents that can be discriminating, can be disparaging to minorities, that can insult people and not think twice about it, that can insult women and people don't raise even an eyebrow about it. These traits that we'll go over these nights are things that because we have lost, not we as us in this room, but humanity, because we've lost a lot of our humanity living in this secular world, that we have to reinvestigate the Quran, to look back at what Allah wants and expects from us. And so yes, I'm going to be building up our discussions lately every night based on a verse of the Quran and then expanding from there. And so for the few minutes I have left for tonight before I conclude in this brief introduction, I want to just speak briefly about the Quran. The Quran is such an amazing book, really. It's such a powerful book. Unfortunately, as many of our scholars have said, the likes of Ayatollah Jafar Subhani and many of our great ulama, that unfortunately the Quran has become a neglected book in our lives. We probably have a copy on a top shelf at home in our bookshelf if we have any books at home on Islam. We probably have a Quran right now hanging from the rearview mirror of our car. I'm sure all of you have apps on your smartphones, at least one Quranic app. Maybe you have a screensaver of a picture of the Quran. Hopefully your ringtone is not a musical song, but a verse of the Quran or something to remind you of the Quran. But unfortunately, as a global Muslim ummah, we have really relegated the Quran to a book of ceremonies. Somebody gets married, we start with the Quran. A person passes away, we recite Surah Yasin. We're going on a vacation, we'll walk with the Quran above our head. We use the Quran very ceremoniously. We'll get to the customs and the Heathrow, and somebody will recite a verse from Surah Yasin so that our bags don't get open. I did that yesterday, incidentally, and it worked. But unfortunately, that's really some of our connection to the Quran is a very superficial connection. It's just in times of grief or in difficulty or in sadness. But do we actually sit and read and ask the Quran to give us guidance in every aspect of our lives? If you think about it, you go back to the history of Rasulullah. When he was before the age of 40, he was called As-Sadiq Al-Amin, the truthful, the trustworthy. People knew him as an honest man. What happened the day of the Muharram when the revelation began? He was still the same person. But now the Quraysh, the disbelievers, they began to have a vendetta against him. He is misguiding our youth, they would say. He's corrupting the society because these verses are talking about economic equality. Right? It's talking about social justice. It's talking about how the black and the Arab and the white and the Ajam and all of these people are one. They're all equal. And you can't have that in a society, whether it be 1,400 years ago or even today. You can't go in Hyde Park and preach economic equality and social justice and equality of the races. People will look at you like this is, I'm white, I'm better than that person who's a dark skin. And that's an unfortunate reality of today. So when the messenger brought this mission and this message, which was rooted in the Quran, this upset the balance of power at his time. It upset the balance so much that he hopes wanted him killed. And we know that he ended up going to Medina and then Islam spreads, and we know that entire story. But the point of this is that the Quran is a transformative book. Many people in this room and around the world who have come into Islam left their previous religion they were born into. Ask many of them and they'll say they read a verse of the Quran, or they heard a verse about Islam and they investigated, they came into Islam. For many of us, unfortunately, for many people, Islam and the Quran, it's again a book of ceremony. They'll say, well, I get my ahkam from the Quran, I get my fiqh. But did we know that in the Quran, which is 6,300 and some odd verses, 8% of the Quran is about ahkam, about praying, fasting, the hijab, jihad, homes. All of these ayat, if you put them together about the daily fiqh, 500 verses, that's it, out of 6,300 verses. 8% of the Quran is only about our relationship to God, how we pray, and even that's not in the Quran. How we make wudu, how we fast, how we perform the Hajj. So if only 8% of the Quran is about our terrestrial, celestial relationship, how you and I connect to God, what is the rest of the 92% about? 30% of the Quran, we're told, is about Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of judgment, about the day of accountability. And let me just touch upon this very briefly, because really the day of judgment is something that we tend to forget. Unless we have a funeral in our community, unless we go to the graveyard actively and look at the names of those tombstones of our friends, our family that passed away, we don't remember death. Even if you look at how cities are nowadays designed in the modern world, the cemetery is way on the outskirts of the metropolis. It's not in the downtown, because downtown is where people make money. It's where the stock market is. You don't want to remember death there. So we move the graveyard to way outside of the city limits. So we don't even drive beside the graves to remember death. But if you think about it and we reflect on death, death becomes the best way for us to change our lives, to engage in that change of heart, that revolution that we were talking about and we will continue to reflect upon. If we focused on death, we would reflect on where we go. And I don't mean just where we go with our 2 feet, to the nightclubs or to the pubs or wherever we go. I mean, where we would go on the internet. We would be thinking about what website we go into before we even type that website in the browser. If we thought about death, if we reflected on death on a frequent basis, we would be careful of what we say. Not just to one another. When I'm in front of you, I can speak nice to you, it's easy. But when you turn your back, or when I'm on social media, then I can say anything about anybody on Twitter or Snapchat or Instagram because they're not there. So if I remember death, I'll be careful of not only my words that I verbalize, I'll be careful what I type on my social media account. I'll be careful what pictures I put on my profile. I'll be careful of everything that I non-verbally declare. And if we remember death, we would be careful of what we look at. Not just the indecent scenes on the streets, but the indecency on our screens. We'd be careful about that. We wouldn't go to those sites that promote certain things and ideologies. We'd be careful of all of these things. In short, we would live a life in which God becomes the center point, in which our, again, remembrance of death on a regular basis would be something to transform our lives, to become a transformative experience. And so this is, again, a third of the Quran just about death and the Day of Judgment. Not to scare you and I into submission, not to make us frightful of the fire of hell, but rather for us to realize that in all of this, in all of the things that God has put in, the haram and the halal, the forbidden, the permissible, there is something for the betterment of us as individuals, and us as a collective, as humanity, as a society of human beings, and a society of Muslims. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so through these nights and these 10 discussions, I want to, and I will be looking at the akhlaq of humanity, the ethics, the morality, what Islam expects from us. How did Abdullah Hussein, how did he live his life? How did he get to be a person where people who on one day were his opponents, the next day they would come over and transform and become his helpers and assistants? People that we praise on the day of Ashura, people that we respect, people that we greet and salute in the ziyarat of Ashura. And so in these discussions we'll look at what it means to have interpersonal relationships. All of us in this room have some form of relationship with another human being, whether it's our parents, whether it's our siblings, our spouse, whether it's just co-workers, whether it's friends at school. And whether they be Muslim or not, this is really the beauty of Islam. And the beauty of Ahlul Bayt Islam, as we will see, that they don't differentiate or discriminate. They teach us how to deal with Muslims, how to deal with Muslims who don't even follow the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, how to deal with non-Muslims. That's a clear teaching within the Quran and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt Islam. And so in this series, we will also go over some of those areas and to see better our relationship with one another and how we can better improve ourselves, ultimately to get closer to Allah, but also at the end of the day to become better human beings, better practitioners of Islam, and better people who have submitted to the teachings of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad alayhi wa salatu wa salam. Let me conclude with a few words about Karbala and the tragedy that we are gathering from tonight onwards to recollect. As I said, it's almost 1400 years since the tragedy of Karbala began. And this is a passion which does not stop the hearts of the believers. But what precipitated, what led up to this day of Ashura? What led up to the fact that the grandson of Rasulullah, 50 years after the death of his beloved grandfather, our beloved Prophet, what happened in 50 years in the Ummah of Islam that the Ummah, the religion, the practitioners of this religion, the so-called practitioners, were ready to shed the blood of the grandson of Rasulullah, to take his women and children as prisoners, to decapitate the men. What led up to this situation where people who are so-called Muslims could kill and shed the blood of the innocent of Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam? It goes back to the month of Rajab in the year 60 after the Hijrah. And actually even goes back before that. It goes back to the day that Rasulullah began the mission of Islam. But I'm going to skip all of that because I'm sure you all know the history of Rasulullah and the animosity with Abu Sufyan and Banu Umayyah that they had. But for our objective, the tragedy of Karbala began at the death of Muawiyah. We're told that it was the month of Rajab in the year 60 after the migration that Muawiyah leaves this world. And as Sayyid al-Shuhada is in the city of Rasulullah in Medina, he gets a messenger who comes from Sham and he tells him that Muawiyah is no longer alive. He's gone to his creator. And Abu Abdullah begins his statement with that famous word, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, that we're all from Allah and we're all going back to Allah. He says those words and immediately he realizes that the situation in Medina is going to be completely something that will be beyond his control. Again, this is something he knew from the days that he was born. He was foretold so many times that he would face a day where his blood would be shed. The nights and days of Rajab began to pass. And the governor in Medina was given an order by Yazid that I want you to take the oath of allegiance, the bayat, from a few people, the entire city of Medina first and foremost. But there were 3 or 4 key individuals in Medina who were basically the public enemy number 1. That they were forced, they had to give the oath of allegiance. Because Yazid knew that if these people would capitulate and submit to his demands, everybody would give in to the caliphate of Yazid. La'natullah alayhi. And one of those men was the man that we mark tonight, Sayyid al-Shuhada. He was told to give the oath of allegiance, and he was quoted as saying that I refuse to give this oath of allegiance in the middle of the night, in the darkness in my house. We'll arrange a gathering and we will discuss the issue further at hand. Brothers and sisters, as the days and nights of that month began to wear on, and Abu Abdullah realized that the people of Medina and the people of the Muslim lands had, in essence, turned their back on him with the exception of a few noble souls. He realized that his time, his days and hours in Medina were numbered. We're told, as the historians mention, that before he made that move to Mecca, he went to a few people's homes in Medina. He went to a few different locations. One of the last locations, however, that he went to was the grave of his father, grandfather, Rasulullah. We're told that Imam Hussein, although a grown man at this time, he sits at the feet of his grandfather, Rasulullah. He begins to shed tears. He begins to cry and lament to his grandfather, Rasulullah. We don't know the actual wordings of what Imam Hussein was saying, how he was opening up his heart to his grandfather. What were those words of endearment? What was he saying to Rasulullah? But he was definitely telling his grandfather that I'm leaving Medina because of this situation in your ummah, because of the dead end that I have come to. We were told that he leaves the grave of his grandfather Rasulullah. He goes towards Jabbatul Baqi. We can only imagine, brothers and sisters, especially those who have been to Medina and who have made that walk from Masjid al-Nabawi to the locked gates of Medina. We can imagine what the feeling was for Imam Hussein walking towards Jabbatul Baqi. We're told that he goes to the grave of his brother Imam Hassan, who just 10 years prior was coughing up his internals. He was bleeding and vomiting from the poison that he had been inflicted with. He sits at the grave of his older brother Hassan. He bids his brother Hassan farewell. He tells his brother, he remembers those words his brother told him when Imam Hassan was about to die, and Imam Hussein was there. Imam Hassan tells his brother Hussein, he says that you see what I'm going through. He says, you see the blood that I'm vomiting. He says, but there is no day like your day, O Abu Abdullah. There is no day like your day where 30,000 people Abu Abdullah leaves the grave of his brother Imam Hassan. We're then told he walks somewhere. We don't know where he walks, but he goes to his grave of his dear mother, Bibi Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. He goes to the grave of Fatima Zahra, the same mother that had gone through so many difficulties, the same mother who had been pushed against the door and the wall when she had heard the scares of her son Hussein, the same mother who was there, who would be lamenting and crying over what would happen to her son Abu Abdullah. We're told that he goes to the grave of his mother Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. Imam Hussein sits at the grave of his beloved brother. Again, we don't know the exact words of Abu Abdullah. What can a man open in his heart to his mother? What can he be saying to his mother? Eventually, however, we realize that he has to bid farewell, that this has been decreed by Allah, that this event will have to transpire. He leaves the grave of Fatima Zahra. He goes to one or two last places. He goes to his half-brother Muhammad al-Hanafiya. He tells his brother Muhammad al-Hanafiya, he says that this movement, this revolution I'm about to embark upon, he says, إِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ عَشِرًا وَلَا غَتِرًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا. Because I'm not making Medina, I'm not making this revolution for fame or for glory. I don't seek power or authority. He says, إِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّتِي جَنِّي. All I'm doing in this revolution is seeking to bring about reformation, rectification in the ummah, in the nation of my grandfather Rasulullah. He says, أُرِيدُ أَنْ أَعْمُرَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَنْهَى عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. All I want to do is tread on the path of encouraging to the good and deflecting from the evil. And I follow in the seerah of my grandfather and my father. Brothers and sisters, as Sayyid al-Shuhada says these last lines, he gathers the women, he gathers the children together, he gathers his beloved sister lady Zainab alayhi salam, Messiah, the mother of tribulations, and they begin to make their journey towards Mecca. And eventually, as we will see in the nights to come, their journey will go from Mecca towards Kufa, ending in the desert of Karbala, where Abu Abdullah alayhi salam will lose his life. He will lose his life in the defense of Islam, in the defense of Rasulullah's message, and in defense of the Quran and its teachings that Allah gave to his grandfather Rasulullah. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إن لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وأنتم مسلمون. Thank you.